My earliest memory was a wartime memory, I think. The earliest one I can put my finger on was when James Latham Woodyard caught fire and there was a big blaze and we had to evacuate our houses and go on to meal fields. I remember we had our own little shelters in the back garden and we lived within feet of the yard. And I can remember lots of people running around and the big flames and all the rest of it, and someone picking me up. It must have been my dad, wrapping me in a blanket, and I was so little because I had a little knitted teddy bear in my arms, and then running through mill fields, and the big flames and all the little cinders flying through the air. People weren't panicking, they were just hurrying to get into the shelters on mill fields by Leverage Road. There were huge, underneath there was huge shelters, which I expect are still there, just been buried, I expect.
So when you think back to this area when you were a child, what sort of an area was it? What sort of people lived here?
Mostly working class, and I was just going to say upper working class, but working class people that had a few quid as well, who started business and things like that, and were quite wealthy compared with some of us. Certainly loads and loads of traders, so shop owners, all sorts of people, but mostly there weren't the people that came in that's been coming in lately to make money. Well, they were comfortable. Sure, let's put them that way. That's a nice word to you. They were comfortable. My dad worked as a builder, so he had builder's money. My mum worked as a cook in a cat, so she had cook's money. But some people would buy a little shop or even a stall and get a few more bob. Chatsworth Road was our market. Very busy, very noisy. It opened twice a week. One of the ones that sticks in one of the stallholders was Jack Lower, who was not a relative of mine, but a family connection, a cousin of mine, and he just sold tin food and cakes and things, the sort of thing you would buy in the supermarket now. You couldn't sell them on store now, and he was up there and he'd knock them out. There was a cat's meat stall, of course. Every market had a cat's meat stall that stunk a little bit. There were some wonderful tailors' shops. People didn't go into Primarks in those days. They went and had a suit made. As poor as you were, you went and had it tailored for you, men and women, and they were everywhere. But the one or two, I think they were in Chatsworth Road, there was Silver's. Roseman's, I'm getting mixed up with some. Roseman's was up the road there, and they used to make all your suits. And they were all very, very Jewish. A lot of Jewish people lived in the area, and they were all good traders and would give you good business. They'd look after you. A little story, there was a shop up in Chatsworth Road, what was sometimes called the sock shop, or Lou's. It was called Lou's shop. I don't know why they called it Lou's, because the man who owned it was called Alf. But it was always known as Lou's, and everyone called him Lou. But he was a proper little Jewish fella. Really looked like something from the Middle East, and he was a proper old Cockney Jew. And he was so kind and so nice. And I can remember when we were first married, we lived in Chatsworth Road. It was in 1960 or 61. My first son was born, and he wasn't very well. My wife wanted to buy some trousers for him. So she went into Lou and she said, "Oh, I don't know which ones are not. I don't know if they'll fit him or not." He said, "Well, fetch him out." He said, "No," she said, "He's not very well, he's indoors." And he picked up a great big load of trousers and said, "There, take them home, sort out one you want and fetch the rest back." Now, you won't get that today, you see. And wished us luck and wished a good health to the little boy. So, I mean, it was that kind of place, and we got on very well with everyone around there. There would be the occasional skirmish, of course. Someone would say, "Look at this apple you bought me, it's bloody rotten." There'd be a bit of back chat and there'd be a bit of argument, you know. All grist to the mill, all little adding to the entertainment. There was industry, yes, there was industry. There was a lot of furniture made. There were, I mean, later Lesney's came along with the toys and things like that, but that was before. When I was a kid, there was mostly timber yards, there were furniture people, There were loads and loads of small shops. Lots of people started small business, selling things in front of their houses. When I say a lot of people, one or two people did that, you know. They'd make something and they'd put them in front of their house or out through the front window if they lived in the main road. So there was a lot of that going on.
Can you remember any of the local pubs from when you were little?
Well, when I was little, of course, yeah, but when I got a bit older, I knew them even better, yeah. Well, of course, I was born down by the Lee Bridge there, and there were 4 pubs along by the river there, which we all went into, and even up until I was a bit older. But there were lots of pubs. The old Black House in Chatsworth Road, which is the Clapton Park Tavern, for some unknown reason was known as the Black House. People have said that they think it was because after the funerals they would all go and have a drink in there. There was that one. There was the Stag up a bit road opposite Chats Palace, where Chats Palace is now. There were loads and loads of pubs around in this area. There were little corner pubs which have long ago disappeared, even before this recent dearth of pubs when they're all dying off. Even before that they disappeared.
What about local characters that are like legendary people, you know, sort of big, larger than life people?
There's one or two. I'm thinking of one that nobody would have heard of except me. His name was Alfie Berryman. He was a dustman. And if anyone ever watches this film, then they'll know that Alfie Berryman. And he used to do a bit of buying and selling. He'd buy anything and sell anything. And he used to dabble in second-hand cars. And he was flash and a bit leery and a bit loud and wonderful. A lovely, lovely man. And he was loved. But be careful when you buy anything, because he'd swear blind that it was a brand new Rolls Royce, and when it wasn't, you know. So he was one of those characters. He was larger than life. One of the things I do remember was when the Queen was crowned. I was only a teenager then, and she came round after the day after the coronation. She came round all round London and she came through Hackney. And I can remember we all went up to wait in Downs Road for her to come through with the open top car, and with Prince Philip as he was then. And we waited for hours and hours and hours. All the roads were blocked up and the police were holding crowds back. And then along came something and a big cheer went up, and it was a local milkman. I was born just before the war, so I've got lots of stories of bombing in the war, but I lived just on the other side there then. I do remember Chatsworth Road, the Chatsworth estate was now. I remember that getting bombed. That's not true, I'm exaggerating a bit. I remember it being there one day and then suddenly realising there was a big hole there. And I was just a kid then. But I remember lots of these places, when they were bombed like that, they didn't build houses straight away, they were left. And they built a wall around them, and because they had cellars, so there was a deep, they filled them up with water. And that was for when the fire engines came, when the bombs were falling and everything, the engines could drop their pipes in there and use that reservoir. So there was lots of reservoirs around. Dangerous as well. Mum tell you, don't go near there. And we used to climb over and swim in them, yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot how, you know, people say to me, oh, you've seen lots of changes. Well, of course, haven't we all, you know? The houses have changed, just like I said, the pubs have gone, the culture has changed. But what I find very, very hard to accept now, it's so quiet. Listen, we're in Hackney, in the notorious Clapton Park estate. Listen. We're in the country with the birds whistling. And I think that's to do with the roads being blocked up, so we don't get a lot of traffic through here. A lot of the industry going. People being quiet, sitting on their iPads, yeah, watching telly. People now, when I was a kid, there'd be half a dozen football matches, kicking tins around out there, screaming and shouting and calling one another names. There would be people come round selling things, shouting out, bells ringing, you know, ragmen and all things like that. Over the back here, just at the back of the marshes, was Leighton Marshalling Yard, the biggest railway marshalling yard in the country, and the trains would bash into the buffers and they'd do that all night long. We just slept through it and didn't take too much notice. The big power station, which was just over the road there, every now and again made a huge noise. We used to call it, and I don't know if the technical what was happening, letting off pressure. It sounded like a big steam, and it drowned the place, and it went on for 5 minutes. And at random, you never knew when it was going. The middle of the night, early in the morning, no one turned the blind. No one bothered about it. There was all that kind of stuff. People shouting in the streets and singing in the street. That's what I miss as well. The latest pop songs or the old songs, but come out of the pub having a few glasses of beer, and they'd sing all the way home. Don't do it now. So the place is quieter. Yeah, Metal Box was up in Erswick Road there, and it was called Barlow's before Metal Box took over. My mum worked there, and they used to call it the Tin Bashers. Where are you working till? Up the Tin Bashers. Because they made biscuit tins and things like that. You see, it was metal boxes they made. And next door to it was a funny little place called Cakeomas. Do you know what that is? No. Who's asking the question, me or you? Right. They made cake mixture. You bought this Cakeoma in a little packet and mixed it up and put it in the oven and made cakes. So that was quite a well-known one. There was lots of places like that. The people who used to come round, not all just traders, well, I suppose they were traders. There was the ragman, of course, paraffin man with ringing his bell, ice cream men, but they used to be street singers and street entertainers. Before they built big tower blocks and things like that, you could stand in the middle of the road and people could hear you. And a lot of these, just after the war, were ex-servicemen who couldn't work, or for one reason or the other, and was perhaps a little bit eccentric, and could sing, and came round singing, and hundreds of kids would follow them. Sometimes the kids would be taking the mickey, of course, and sometimes, but people would come out and give them money, either because they had lovely voices or because they were old soldiers, I'm not sure. They'd have a horse and cart come round that had a whirligig, a roundabout on the back. Have you ever heard of this one? They spin it round, and all the kids would sit in it. And it was a penny to go on there, or 2 jam jars. Jam jars had a deposit on them, those, and you could pay in jam jars. He had a bloody great big sack full of jam jars. But that was a highlight, and it was a circular thing, obviously. The horse pulled it along. Now, if they spun it round and the horse moved along, you had double the pleasure. All for the same price, and it had little flags fluttering as you went round. So that was a real simple thrill. Yeah. Now, not forgetting, of course, the Winkle Man. Every Sunday, every Cockney bloke would tell you, every part of London, the Winkle Man would come round. And our one was a man called Mr. Woolley. And I do believe there are still Woolies in the area. I know his son, who must be a little bit older than me now. He was around until 5 or 6 years ago. But Woolley used to come down, a proper old Cockney, and he had that wonderful way of calling. Because they're like opera singers in their technique. They could make themselves heard and understood for a long, long way. Not to decry opera singers, but they had that as a knack. There's a way of doing it. And he used to shout out, "Winkle!" and with a yodel. "Come on, mother, come and taste them, mother." I can remember it now. And my dad used to say, "Come and taste them, mother, you lay down on it, he'd call the police on you." But he was good, and what he used to do, and whatever was in the news, he would call it out. It was, "Winkle, come and taste them. Snowing hard in Russia today," and all that kind of, there was a big storm, he would do it. It was all tongue in cheek. It wasn't ITV or anything. But he was a great character. And then we had the milkman, of course, in those days, had horse and carts. And just before that, the milkman had, this is how old I am, he had one of those 3-wheel barrows. And we lived down the bottom of the hill, and he used to give us a penny to push him up the hill, to get it up the hill.